So governance is the delicate art of managing chaos and order. And some of the values of order include predictability, knowledge, and conservation. But there are also problems of too much order: stagnation, entropy, collapse. Likewise, there are values of chaos, which include exploration, imagination, and improvement, and problems from too much chaos, which include destruction, injustice, brutality. And for any human society, there's a need to strike a dynamic balance between those elements. Now, in regulating emerging technologies, there are two things that really should be held distinct. They often aren't. One of those is policy choices, and the other is effective processes. And policy choices, on the one hand, are grounded in a culture's particular inclinations towards order or chaos, hopes or fears, conservation or innovation. And any set of points on that grid is perfectly valid a place to regulate from if it reflects the values of that culture. On the other hand, though, effective processes are tested methods of enacting any set of policy choices in a manner that's likely to get you the outcomes you want. So effective regulatory processes allow for broad stakeholder input. They don't lock in elite privilege. They allow the street to find its own uses. And they manage risk with adequate information. And there are problems of regulation, again, on both sides, from acting too early and from acting too late. From regulating too early, one of the things you're doing is you're protecting and enshrining existing elite interests. You're also disenfranchising a group that can't defend its interests because the future doesn't have a constituency. And that's one of the problems with a focus group or marketing-driven approach is we can't imagine the things that we can't imagine. We can imagine incremental improvements on what we have, but we can't imagine radical breakthroughs. So there's really nobody around to argue for those in the face of real challenges to the current technologies and current businesses we have. Regulating too early also stifles innovation because we can't know what the systems are going to evolve into in advance. I was talking last night with a gentleman who was talking about moves in the EU to regulate smart TV. And he was telling me that the approach being taken is to regulate hardware design very early on. And one of the things that came up in our conversation was nobody really knows what a smart TV system is going to end up looking like, what users are going to want, what new uses are going to come out that nobody can imagine now. And regulating that technology, and particularly the hardware early, cuts off that process. It means we'll never get to find out because one solution will be locked into place. But on the other hand, regulating too late has its own problems. There's a chaos of unintended consequences when things just run amok and we don't know where they're going, we can't know where they're going, and we just watch the train charging straight ahead. And when we do that, we create a thing called path dependency, which means we've just got to go down the road we've already got because things have just gone too far for us to turn around and change direction. And also in corporate behavior, one of the things we've seen is that a lack of predictability incites rogue behavior. And what you hear from a lot of corporations is we don't really care what the rules are, but we need a set of rules because that'll tell us what to do so we won't get in trouble later. And if those rules aren't in place, we'll just go ahead and do anything we want because you can't hold us to account for anything. So there's a new term that's kicking around for a means of how to handle this dilemma of finding that sweet spot between regulating too early and regulating too late. It's called anticipatory governance. And anticipatory governance doesn't mean jumping in early to stifle innovation. What it does mean is creating a process that allows regulation, and often industry self-regulation, by letting a constituency for the future evolve and speak as users get a hold of a technology, as the industry itself engages with its users, engages with its critics, to come up with its own means of regulation and things that it values and sees that might be necessary. And it also provides the ability to quantify risk so that informed policy choices can be made. So once we've picked that spot on the policy map of risk and reward, opportunity and conservation that we want to hit, we'll have the information in hand through practice to know how to hit that spot sweetly with regulation. And by combining policy choices and effective processes, we create an evolutionary system that still allows different policy alternatives. So we can pick the spot that we want to regulate to. And it lets us set the balances of chaos and order, risk and reward, that we as a culture decide are appropriate for us. but an effective process can let us hit any one of those balance points. However, if it was easy, everyone would be doing it and doing it right. And we've seen some failures in the system. One classic example is American copyright legislation, which was really taken at the risk of recording industries who wanted to foreclose some of the opportunities that were rising in digital file distribution and regulate that too soon. And it was done in no small part to legislate a failed business model, to protect an existing elite and shut down the possibility of the street finding its own uses for new technologies. We've also seen it with banks that are too big to fail because we regulated them too late, are trapped in path dependency of a system that we just can't handle anymore because it's just running out of control. We've also seen some strange sort of successes. And one of them that a lot of people don't usually think of as a self-regulatory success is, in the early days of Hollywood, the movie companies developed something called the Hays Code, which is a means of self-regulating for morals and values. And it was done in the face of Congress threatening to regulate their free speech. And what happened was the producers sat down with critics, particularly religious critics, and came up with a set of standards for what could and couldn't be shown in general release movies. And what that process allowed was for a society's values to change. And as we got more permissive, we didn't have to deal with the problem of things just being frankly outlawed. We could continue that negotiation, let the standards get a little looser, let things evolve, and let the street find its own uses for movies and representations of people in movies. Another example is scuba training. And scuba is a dangerous technology. But as an industry and as a recreational practice, it's one of the safest things around because the companies in that industry didn't want to face the kinds of regulation that they thought that a government might come up with. We instead sat down, created a very rigorous system of credentialing and a culture of safety. It was really strictly enforced on retailers, on dive masters, and on divers, so that it's become a very, very, very safe industry without having to deal with negotiating through an official regulatory system. But we don't have any crystal balls for how to do this or where that sweet spot is. But if we challenge order, and if we manage chaos towards consensus values of risk and reward, we can evolve our systems with justice. Thank you.